Sales Proformance Show.
Welcome back to another episode of the Sales Proformance Show, where we delve into the journeys of the most intriguing, successful entrepreneurs. And today, I'll tell you what, I got a special guest with us today. You know, we've had some entrepreneurs who've been doing this for a while or have gone through some roads of success. And today's guest is really early into his entrepreneurship and owning his own business. And I think this is the most inspiring show to talk about, because there's a lot of you out there right now who are thinking about or have thought about and just haven't taken the leap of jumping into business ownership. And listen, I'm not going to tell you that it's for everybody, but this story today is one you're going to want to listen to. I have Phillip Kirk, the owner of Nomadic Barber Co. And like I said, this guy's journey is really inspiring. There's a lot that we're going to unpack here and touch on, because he puts it all on the line. He's resilient and he busts his ass every day to build his business and do things even outside the box to enforce success. So Phillip, I want to welcome you to the Sales Proformance Podcast show. Thanks for being here today.
Hey, thanks for having me, Dave. This is awesome. I'm really excited.
Great, man. Great. Listen, so Phil, let's talk about your background. I don't want to go too far back, but let's talk about your journey and what's gotten you here today. I know it's a big question, but let's give our listeners a little bit of background.
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in a small town in Utah called Tooele. It was pretty much known for, like, that town had the stigma of you're dating your cousin or livestock. And I was probably like a fourth or fifth generation in that town. And it was just a one stoplight town. I remember when we first got our second stoplight. I mean, it was a big deal. But needless to say, I grew up in a place where I didn't really feel like I belonged, because it was so small and I had such a big, gregarious personality that just people didn't know what to do with me. And so I had to leave as soon as I turned 18. But I got a job right out of high school at a credit union, did really, really well. Quickly learned that I don't really like people telling me what to do, especially if I found a way that was more efficient or easier or more fun, you know? And I started realizing, oh man, I don't understand how people can go and get a corporate job and just slave away for a gold watch when they retire at 65. I hated that idea. But I wanted to be a doctor. So I thought, okay, well, I got to go to school, you know, do pre-med, go get all your prerequisites done.
All right.
Get a good GPA, good MCAT score, and go to a good med school and go be a doctor. I wanted to go be a pediatric oncologist.
Okay.
And so, yeah, I left at 18. I went to school, and I figured, again, weird personality. I find connections in different areas. I was going to go get a business degree, pre-med with a minor in business. And my thought process was, you know, who runs hospitals? We all think it's doctors, but it's not. It's guys with MBAs and accounting degrees. And my mother worked in the medical field. And so I would sit here and listen to her and her boss, an orthopedic surgeon, just talk about all the messy things about the business side of medicine and how these admins don't know why we need this particular procedure. We just see that it costs $50,000, but this one doesn't do the same thing for 25. So we're not going to approve this one. And I thought, okay, well, if I go get a business degree and then go into med school, I'm going to stand out, and maybe I can bridge that gap between the nerds, the doctors, and the monkeys in suits. And so that's what I wanted to do. So I thought I had my whole career path laid out. And I went to Utah Valley University and started that. And I was sitting, obviously I'm not a doctor. Obviously I'm a barber now. Really weird pivot from where I thought I was going to be to where I am now. But I was sitting in an entrepreneurship class, and I was listening to this guy talk about, it was the teacher. I can't even tell you what his name was anymore. I hated going to school. I loved learning, but I hated being there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, oh, totally. Totally makes
So
sense.
I was sitting in this class and I was listening to this professor talk about, you go get your 4-year degree and then you go get a job and you can make anywhere from 90 to 120K. And I was like you're making like $65,000. Like I just like, I'm going to go in all this amount of debt to, on the low end, make 25,000 more than you. Like there's got to be something different. And I just started realizing it almost felt, and I know there's probably a lot of your listeners who, went the route you're supposed to go, 4-year degree, started at the bottom of a corporate structure, worked their way up, very, very successful. And a lot of people do that and it works for a lot of people. But I realized my personality, that wasn't going to work for me. So I dropped out of school and I became a door-to-door salesman.
Yeah.
I had never left Utah. We went to Disneyland once, but I'd never really traveled. And I thought, this world is so big. I'm getting out of here. I had a brother pass away. It was a real sobering moment where I was like, life is short. He was 21
wakes you up.
And I need to go do stuff. And so my buddy convinced me to go be a door-to-door salesman selling security systems. And I packed my bags and drove to Texas and started doing that.
And let's back up here too, because I know you're being a little bit modest and you and I have had these conversations. Not only were you going to, going to get into medical school and all that stuff, but let's let everybody know here too, in early paths. I mean, you scored pretty high on that, right? When you were taking that test.
I was taking some practice MCATs because I found that I have a very good memory and I am very intelligent. My teachers would say I'm probably lazy, very intelligent, but very lazy. And I really hated that label because I always thought I'm not lazy. I'm just not passionate about what you're telling me to do.
Yes.
When I find something I'm passionate about, I'll run through walls to get it done. So I would take these practice MCATs so I could figure out where are my weaknesses in my learning and what should I focus on, I'm really proficient in this level, so I don't need to focus too much here, but maybe this area I'm not doing too hot in. So I took a bunch of practice MCATs to kind of tell me where I was at. And, I scored anywhere from a 515 to a 518, which is about the 90th percentile on these practice MCATs. Now, again, I want to be very clear. These were like free MCAT practice tests. Right. So but I'm not really, it could be like one of those fake IQ tests.
I'm going to cut in. You're a super intelligent guy. And the thing that I want to impress upon people is there are some people out there right now who are feeling like you were feeling. And you're like, man, I gotta get a job, right? But I'm just not feeling like I'm fitting in this box. And I think even in school these days, it's even more apparent. Teachers are trying to teach the way they taught 30 years ago to kids, and it's just not running. It's just not meshing that way. They've got to change the way they're doing it. And for you, the idea of really understanding that, man, I'm not fitting in this box was that kind of a first sign where you're like, you know what? I'm going to really look at doing something myself.
Yeah, I think I first realized that about myself in high school.
You did? Okay, early.
Yeah, I was really good at taking tests, but then I started realizing, oh, you're not testing intellect. You're not testing my comprehension of what you're teaching me because my grades are being weighed on this busy work.
Yeah.
And I started feeling like my grades and my GPA are based upon my level of obedience, not necessarily the recall of what you taught me. Because I would throw the curve off for a lot of people in some of my classes.
Yeah.
But I graduated with a 2.0 GPA because I just never showed up. I always kept asking, what the heck is the point of even being here? Like,
was it motivating? Was it motivating?
No, it was, dude, it was such a drag. It really was. And I loved the social part of high school. Right? I had a lot of fun. And I'm not one of those guys that's like, oh, if I could go back, relive the glory days. Absolutely not. My personality is just find the fun in whatever you're doing and chase it because life is short. And so, I realized I didn't fit in a box, and I started looking at other things of like, where do I fit in? And I just started realizing, all these people that we admire and revere, Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, all these titans of industry, right?
Yeah.
A lot of them dropped out of college. A lot of them didn't really fit in, so they built their own box. And they put the flag up and people are like, hey, I want to jump in your box. And I just said, I'm just going to go do what I do and we'll see what happens.
Yes.
So
Just, we got to clip that because it is so true. And where this is going here, we all do not, and I think more so even after like COVID, it's been more apparent that people don't want to, or they're not comfortable fitting in this box, and they're going to move in directions that work for them. So you got the sales job, right? I want to stay on track with that. You got this sales job going, and then all of a sudden you're like, I'm in it, and you're doing well actually at the job, right?
yeah, I was doing really good. It turned out I have a knack for talking to people. And again, and I loved the job. I was a really good salesman. I would say I was probably in the top 10%. I probably could have been number one in the company, but instead of focusing on just sales, I started finding myself focusing more on the adventure behind it all, right? Because I grew up in a small town in Utah, and now I'm out in Texas, a place that I've never been before. Yeah. And I'm meeting all these really cool people. Like I remember meeting a 99-year-old lady who was talking to me like what it was growing up 80 years ago. Like I'm talking to a living history book. She was there during the civil rights movement. I've talked to people whose grandparents were born slaves and then freed. And then you start realizing the stuff that you read about in high school and college in these books, chapters in a book, or even just like a page in a chapter, is now all of a sudden becoming very real and changing my perspective on a lot of things. And so that's what I fell in love with the job, was there is the whole adventure of it all. Like I am going to go to a place that I've never been before. I'm going to go see things that I'd never have the opportunity to see. And I'm going to meet people that I never otherwise would have met. And that's what I fell in love with. So then I realized, if I go get this amount of sales, my monthly expenses are covered. If I put this much away, I've got some extra money there. But then I can just focus on hanging out and finding a friend and meeting people and getting to know them. And I started realizing I'm learning way more out here in the field as a door-to-door salesman than I was sitting in a classroom. And I was telling all my friends about these different things. And I fell in love with it and did it for a very, very long time up until the pandemic hit. And then obviously you couldn't go door-to-door anymore. So I had to pivot, and I got a corporate sales job, selling insurance, Medicare Advantage plans. So I was talking to older people about their benefits and crushed it. I crushed my first open enrollment period. I got promoted to a manager, cushy salary, full benefits, right? Everything that your high school counselor says you're not going to get unless you have a bachelor's degree. Like I'm rocking that lifestyle now, right? I got two middle fingers in the air saying, take that, Mr. Busico. I'm doing it. Okay. I'm making more than you did, and I don't have a degree. So I think I'm living large and being a king. Yeah. But then again, I realized, now I'm forcing myself, a square peg to fit into a round hole. And I just started hating what was going on. And I realized I got to go back to working for myself again. Because that's what I like to do.
So you have this drive, right? Like even though you're in, and again, corporate America, entrepreneurship, they have their places, but you're just, the point I want to make here is that you're kicking ass in the corporate world, but you're still feeling like, man, this is just not fulfilled. Yeah.
And there's completely unfulfilled.
Explain that a little bit more. I mean, what was it?
I'd clock in every day. I was a manager, and it was a work from home position. So it was, a lot of meetings, just like what we're doing right here. And it was keeping them motivated, but also like, there's all these words and these phrases that I would make fun of as a salesman, right? Because as a salesman, you're by yourself knocking door to door, so you can pretty much say whatever you want. I've had a long-standing obsession with stand-up comedy, so I figured real quick, to be a successful salesman, people don't care what you're selling. Yeah. They are buying you. They're buying your personality. And so I I always said, you know what, like, people like me when I'm happy and when I'm joking and having fun, and that's when I get them to open up to me. And so I just kind of said, I kind of want to be a stand-up comic. I thought that was a career path I could take. So I just used every doorstep as a stage. And if I got people laughing, I knew I was going to sell them, right? Because you're not laughing with someone that you hate. That's just not the way it is. You laugh with people you like. You like them, you're going to buy from them. And that was my method. It came very natural and very easy for me. And again, growing up, I was an LDS kid or a Mormon, Mormon out of a small town in Utah. And there's a lot of material to joke around with, right? Like, oh yeah, I might shave my horns off, or yeah, my 7 wives are back home in Utah. I'm out here making money because we have 37 kids. People would get a kick out of that. So I'm sitting here now and I'm having to use phrases like, let's circle back, or per our last email. And just, it felt so fake. It felt so like everyone was putting on, like, we had our roles to play and we were putting on a play and we were just practicing lines, and it just didn't feel real. And I just found myself becoming more and more depressed, more and more just like, this is horrible. Again, it was like an $80,000 salary plus bonuses plus profit sharing and benefits. And I'm married now, and I'm sitting there thinking like, okay, well, this is what I'm supposed to do. I got to take care of my wife, and we're going to have kids, and we got to do this. So I just got to stick it out. But I just found myself just to be not to be dramatic, but just not wanting to be alive. I hated it. It was just so just draining.
Unfulfilling.
Yeah,
and there's
it was just
people out there. Yeah, it's just unfulfilling.
Going through the motions. Just going through the motions for a paycheck. And I remember in sales, they said you got to have a holy cause or a why. Why are you doing what you're doing? If you're doing it just for the money, you're not going to be successful in this. And they were right. I mean, you're knocking door to door in Texas or Atlanta, Georgia, or St. Louis, Missouri, Houston, right? In the middle of the summer. It's 100 degrees outside plus the humidity. You've got dogs chasing you. You got guns being pulled on you. You're getting yelled at. You're getting chased. You got to have a much deeper reason for why you're going to go put up with this, other than the fact that you could go make, $4,000 in one day. And so my why ended up.
Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Yeah.
Please,
my holy cause ended up being like, I want to go travel. I want to go. Basically at the end of the day, I decided I was going to live my life in a way of, when I'm dying, whenever that day is, if I'm lucky enough to have a death where I'm surrounded by people who love me and I'm on my deathbed and someone says, hey, Phil, what's your biggest regret? I got scared that I would sit back. I put myself in that position and said, I don't want to be the guy that says, I wish I would have done this, or I had this opportunity to try this and I wish I would have done it. You ever seen the movie Yes Man with Jim Carrey?
No, I haven't seen it. No.
Great movie, great message, just saying yes to life. And I just said, I'm not going to take any of the material possessions that I accumulate in my life when I die. Whether there's a heaven, there's a hell, or you just cease to exist. I don't necessarily believe that, because energy doesn't cease to exist. Energy has to transfer somewhere. So wherever that energy goes, I like to think that you're going to take the knowledge that you learned in this life. So I didn't really care too much about material possessions. I cared more about experiences and lessons learned. And I didn't want to be on my deathbed going, I wish I would have asked that girl for a dance. I wish I would have taken that opportunity to travel. I wish I would have, slapped that bull, whatever it was. I just didn't want to regret and losing my time.
We got to clip that back. Listen, just everybody listen to that, rewind that, listen to what he's talking about, because it's so true. We get so caught up in the material things and the things that we think are going to fulfill us. And honestly, it's the experiences and it's the road that you take that is really the most fulfilling. And everybody gets so caught up in their goals or where they want to be with their results, but they never really taken the time to understand the journey is what it's all about. Journey,
it's always
fulfilling journey is all it's about. It's going to be hard. Yeah, it's going to be hard. Yeah, it's going to suck. But you know what? Choose your hard. Is it going to suck that you're sitting in a cubicle at a corporate office, twiddling your thumbs, acting like you're working and getting a paycheck and getting taxes taken out that are getting blown away? Yeah, of course it's going to be hard. Is it going to be hard to go off on your own and really put a business together, which we're going to talk about here in a minute, and bust your ass to do this? Yeah, it's going to be hard. So choose what is going to be hard. You're going to have to choose your hard, but choose the one that's going to be most fulfilling for you. And that's what you did here. And that's what I love.
Exactly. Well, there was a quote, and it's been popping up all over the place. You know, you're going to experience pain in life. Do you want to experience the pain of regret or the pain of discipline? You choose your pain. And back then, I was kind of living that way and didn't even realize it. And it wasn't really, I could have been way more disciplined, right? I could have been way more disciplined and made more money and gone further with a sales career. But to me, it was, I just don't want to live life with regrets. Like I'm here, you know, like a good example, I was in South Carolina, and the crazy thing about South Carolina is there were more battles fought in the Revolutionary War there. The Civil War started in South Carolina, and I was watching some of my colleagues in door to door just working 12 hours a day, knocking, because we only have a short amount of time to make as much money as we possibly can. And I said, yeah, but we're in this place that, like, our country exists today because of this state. Don't you want to go see it? Don't you want to go check things out? And I started to butting heads with some of my managers because I was like, I don't care. Like, I got 2 deals. I'm going to go spend the rest of the day exploring. Like, I made what I needed to make. I don't know whenever I'm going to come back to this place. So I'm going to go live it up while I'm here because I have a very short amount of time. And I don't want to sit there and go, damn, I wish while I was in, you know, Greenville, South Carolina, I would have checked out Clemson's football field.
Right.
I'm going to go do that. You know, like, I'm going to go do that. I made enough money. I'm good. And granted, I could have changed my mindset and said, hey, you know, I spent 2 hours and I made $700 now. I have 8 hours left in my day. Maybe I can go make even more. I got 8 hours. Let's see if we can go sneak into a football stadium. You know, I did that at Notre Dame.
The experience.
Yeah. You know, I went and had a Rudy moment in South Bend, Indiana, where I was on the field and I was looking around, you know, it was the coolest thing ever. So yeah, I definitely found out that I went to the beat of my own drum. And so to go back to this corporate job, right? I thought I was living it up. I had it great. I was on the fast track to finally getting my Porsche, which is like really the only material thing I want is a fast car. I could live in a cardboard box, but if I had like a 911, that's all I care about. I love driving. It's my favorite thing. So, my wife and I, it was Pioneer Day weekend, which is a holiday here in Utah, celebrating the pioneers coming across the plains and settling the state. And we went on a family vacation camping trip to Flaming Gorge, which is a really popular recreation spot. Great, you know, bass fishing. So we were going out there with the whole family, and I remember just feeling sick that I had to go back and go clock into this job where I'm just depressed, and I literally was feeling ill, and I would rather drown in the middle of the lake than have to clock back in and get on a Zoom meeting. Like, I just didn't want to do it anymore. And I remember, you know, at that particular moment, in my job, I had these reps who just, the thing that I felt like my hands were tied, I had to coach these reps off a certain script that was provided by the company. You know, we've tested this script and we know that it provides results. Yeah, but on these different types of personalities, that script is going right over their head and they're not doing what they need to do. They're not dumb sales reps. They just think differently. And so I started getting written up because I was like, nah, fuck your script. I'm just going to go coach to this person's personality. I just spent the last 10 years becoming a master at reading people and learning how to communicate with every personality type. Let me use that skill as a coach, as a mentor, as a manager. I cultivated these skills managing door-to-door sales reps. And I don't know if you have any people that are in that industry in this field, but a lot of reps, man, they're pretty messed up people. You got to keep them motivated. Herding cats is easier than keeping sales reps motivated on the door-to-door industry.
Well, listen, I do a lot of training on this, and my message is to companies when I first assess them or look at them. First thing is we don't use scripts here. We use a dialogue. Okay. It's not a script. And essentially, a lot of companies, what they do is they grab a bunch of product knowledge or product information, they hand it on the lap of sales professionals, and they give them a script and they expect them to execute on it. And then they wonder why their teams aren't being successful. And because essentially they haven't really give them any coach. And then they train them up one time and they say, go out and do it. Essentially what they haven't done is they haven't put together a structural framework that is digestible, number one, for a person to really execute on. And two, they use these sometimes out of the box systems, or they use these frameworks where they're trying to take personalities and just push them a square peg into a round hole.
Yeah, you
And then
can't
they
do
can't
that.
execute. Yeah, and you can't
No.
execute. So
I started looking at these reps. They have this phrase like, the 80% of your time should be with your top 20% performers, right? And the bottom 80% should have 20% of your time. And I'm like, well, my bonus is based off of my team doing the best that I can. So I have these four, they're not performing the way they need to be. I'm going to go spend as much time with them. And then I wanted to get to know them and figure out their personality and how to use their strengths. And because I was very much a personality-based seller, like I learned what worked for me and I exploited that about myself. And I was like, if I can transfer this over, and we started selling like crazy, right? Like my bottom performers for the next 2 weeks were the top performers, like being shout out by directors and stuff. And I'm like, hell yeah, I'm killing it, right? I'm doing what I need to do as a coach. I'm doing what I need to do as a manager and as a team leader. We're getting sales, we're getting results. This is a sales-based company. This is what they want. We just went public. Stockholders want to see growth. Well, HR doesn't care about that. HR was more hung up on the fact that, hey, you didn't follow this script, so we're going to write you up for insubordination. And I remember thinking, this is bullshit. I think I said that to her, and she goes, you can't swear here. You got to keep it Disney G-rated. And you know me well enough after how many times I've cut your hair. I'm a big smartass. So I said, well, D word, I feel like I'm an H word. I'm going to get the F word out of here now. Is that G-rated enough for you, Carrie? It just, you felt like your hands were tied no matter what. I'm like, I can't do my job to the best of my ability because you're tying me down from using my full potential to help my reps gain their full potential. And it was just, every day was a struggle just to turn on the computer. And so we're sitting in Flaming Gorge. I'm talking to my wife. And I felt horrible because we got married, and for 6 years, she would travel the country every summer with me, and I drug her all around, and I was doing the door-to-door thing full time. So I was gone for 2 weeks, home for one, traveling all over the place, loved the adventure, but it was taking its toll on our marriage. And so I think my wife was really happy because he's got a steady job. It's a steady paycheck. It's not dependent on his sales. It's not dependent on any of this. It's guaranteed we can have a comfortable life now. And here I am telling her I would rather bite bullets or panhandle on the street and just sing or something than clock in again. And I begged her. I said, can I just go be a barber? Like, I want to be a barber. I want to go open up a barbershop. I like hanging out in the barbershop. I'm happy there. Everyone's an equal there, no matter what your position, your degree, your status. You're no different than the next guy who just came in.
Yep.
Bullshit. And it just felt like one of the only last bastions of free speech. And you don't have to worry about offending people because you can defend your point and people are listening to you. You're not getting that in corporate America. You're not getting that in the universities that I went to. You're not getting that anywhere else. And I just said, I've always liked the barbershop. I spent a lot of time there as a kid. My personality was shaped inside of a barbershop. I want to go do that. I had a barber named Paul, and he's still cutting hair. He's been doing it for a long time, and he's in Grantsville, Utah. And I just remember getting really excited for a haircut because I could go hang out with Paul and we would joke. He would talk to me like I was an adult, even though I was an 8-year-old boy. He would talk to me and ask my opinions on things. I thought that was really cool.
Cool, right?
So anywhere I went in my door-to-door career, the first thing we would do when we got into town, right? We usually got there in the night, we would sleep. I'd wake up and the first thing I'd do is find a barbershop. the very first thing I would do is go find a barbershop. Even if I just had a haircut a week ago, I'm going to go get a haircut because, if you feel good, you look good you feel great after a haircut. You feel fresh, you feel crisp.
Yeah, you do.
So I'm going to feel better, which means I'm going to sell better because I feel better about myself. And dude, the barber knows everything about the town that you're in. Everyone talks to a barber and they spill all the dirty deets. And so I thought, okay, well, I've never been to this area. This guy knows everything about this area. I'm going to go talk to him and figure out what the vibe of this town is and how do I use that to my advantage to go make as much money as I can while I'm out here. And my grandma cut hair and my aunt cut hair. So I've been around that career my entire life, and it just made it made sense. And it wasn't about the creative side of being able to cut hair or doing that. If I'm being completely honest, I think on a technical skill level, there are so many people better than I am at cutting hair. And I'm not proud enough to say I'm not the best technical cutter. But one thing that I have that other people don't is I'm genuinely interested in who you are in my chair and what makes you tick. I love that. And I'm getting that same thing I used to get in my sales job as door to door is you never know who's going to be on the other side of that door. You never know what's going to make them tick, but I'm going to figure it out and I'm going to get them to buy me. And now as a barber, you're coming to me, you're sitting in my chair, and I'm going to do the exact same thing. And I'm genuinely interested in what you're doing in life. I love it. I get to go home and tell my wife, I learned this today. So
yeah, here's what I want to say. You said one thing there. There was a comment. You said it made sense. Okay. Now, obviously outside of the passion, the idea of just enjoying being in the barbershop. Okay. You found something that was fulfilling for you. And that's what I would really encourage people. Listen, the money will come. You have to really find something that's fulfilling for you because life is too short. I love training. I love sales training. I love doing personal coach. I love development. And that's why I would love coming into your, the barbershop is because you and I get to rap about that stuff, but find something that works for you and go with it. You don't have to be prepared. Here's the other thing. We're going to talk about how you got into business ownership, but you kind of took some steps here too, right? So you're like, okay, great. I want to be a barber. You obviously went to school. You did your deal. Maybe not. But you got to this point where, what was your first step?
Yeah. So my wife looked at me. I mean, we were arguing like I know you're married and your wife is lovely and she's a sweetheart. I don't think she ever pushes your buttons. I don't know. Maybe she does. But
we do it the right way.
Man, I'll tell you, my wife, I wanted to shove her face in the sand of that beach because it's like she wasn't hearing me. All she kept hearing was, I want to quit my job. But she didn't hear why I wanted to quit my job. There was no passion. It was a good career, but not a good career path for me. And I had chased money in sales. I'm done chasing money. I just want to go be happy. I just kept saying like, I'm unhappy. I just want to be happy. And so once she finally got over that initial fear and I looked at her and said, look, I worked a commission only job for 10 years and I was just fine. What makes you think I'm not going to be fine? I'll make money. I can make money. I know how to make money. I said, I just want to be happy. Yeah, I just want to be happy. And so she finally said, okay.
I want to stop there though, really quick. And I'm sorry to cut in on you, but you said something that is so great. If you're chasing money, ain't going to work. If you're making money, it's going to come. Okay. And there's a difference to that. And the amounts might be smaller and bigger and both sides of that. But if you're chasing money, you're never going to be fulfilled and you're never going to maximize it. If you're making money and you feel like you're making money doing what you love, that is going to eventually turn anyway and come around. But I sorry to cut you off, but I want to make sure that we get that point made.
I'll boil it down to even more simple terms. I used to tell this to my reps. When I was in door to door, I became a manager, right? I rose to the ranks of that. And I would tell them in our morning correlation meetings, look, happy people make money. Making money makes people happy. So if you want to make more money, go be a happy person. And the only way you're going to make money in sales is if you're happy enough and people buy you. they don't care what you're selling. They're buying your personality. So just go make a
Brand.
friend.
Yeah. Your
So
brand.
that, I just said, I want to be happy, because if I'm happy, then money will come. And when money comes, I'll get even happier, because now I have the tools to be financially free. And so my wife finally heard me, heard what I was saying. I think she finally heard my soul and was like, oh yeah, he's going to jump off a dam if I keep forcing him to go to this job. I can't be boxed like that. You know that movie, The Other Guys, with Mark Wahlberg and Will Ferrell, and Mark Wahlberg's character kept screaming, I'm a peacock, you gotta let me fly. That's how I felt. I just let me cut the ropes and let me just trust me and let me run. A horse race has got to race. A thoroughbred's got to run. This guy has got to go do what he's got to do. Just trust me and I'll figure it out. I will make it work.
It's funny. I have a similar story with my wife. Sorry to cut in again, but I want to share this. But
you're good.
When I started this, the last company that I sold, we had just gotten married, probably about a year before. Okay. She was pregnant at the time. Okay. We moved into a new house with the kids, and I came home and I said, honey, I'm going to start a new business. And I told her, and she goes, let's go. Let's go. It took her 5 seconds to understand that. For me, she could tell right from the get-go that I was passionate and that I was gonna do it and be successful at it. But yeah, I mean, it's really important to have the support of your spouse. My wife has done that through thick and thin, on the ups and the downs. And I know your wife has done that with you as well.
How old were you when that happened?
Well, let's see. I was.
Or better question, how old was your wife?
Roughly. I could be
early 30s,
30s. Mid 30s, early 30s, and I was mid 30s. Yeah.
How awesome was that she had the foresight and the trust in you? Just be like, okay, cool. And I think that was one of the bigger fights. I'll never forget this. I remember when I told my wife I wanted to be a stand-up comedian, and she was like, okay, I'll let you do it. And I go do open mics still, I don't think I'm going to ever make it a career. I'll make money off of it. I have a barbershop that I can make you laugh in. I don't need to go travel to find laughs. She'll come.
You're doing that enough.
Yeah. And so I remember telling her, and she said something in it. I mean, this was the biggest wound that I'd ever received in my marriage. And I think we get them. But she said, what if you get good at it? And what she meant was she was scared that I was going to be gone all the time. But that hurt me so bad. What if you get good? I'm like, isn't that the point? You want to get good at stuff? And this was a fight that we had a year prior to our argument of me wanting to quit my job. And I totally understand my wife's perspective. I feel like women want to make sure they're being taken care of. They want to make sure, that's a lot of risk. She's betting a lot of money on this show pony, and hopefully he delivers. And I am forever grateful that she finally stopped listening to her anxieties and put them aside and listened to what I was saying. And we've gone back and talked about this before. And she told me, she said, once I got past what I was scared about and started listening, hearing you, I realized that you were so depressed that you would have stayed at that job if I told you to stay. But then I would have to go through the rest of my life knowing that I clipped the wings of my husband. She goes, and I didn't fall in love with you because of what you did for a job. I fell in love with you because of your passion and your zest for life. And it was a really cool learning moment for us. And now if I come to her and say, I want to try this, she goes, fuck it, let's do it. So biggest cheerleader ever. And so I just wonder if there was a moment with you and Laura where you guys had that moment where there was some mistrust, and then she got over that and realized what it was. And now it's just 100%, you have my full support, Dave. And I bet she's like, I'm so glad I did that. Your wife is the happiest person I've ever met.
Well, let me tell you, I mean, the first year we were married, we had so much change going on. At first couple of years, I mean, there was a lot of adjustments in our marriage, getting to understand each other. And And I think if there was one thing that we always had, even from the beginning, was that trust and that ability. And sometimes that has to be grown. Obviously, it has to be grown over time. Uh, but I think if we knew each other well enough that if someone came in or she came in and she wanted to have a discussion and a sit down and she said, I really want to do this, I got to be all in. And we had even situations after that where, she was opening up studios and she was like, hey, I want to do this. I said, let's go, because we developed that trust. But it takes a little bit of time. But I
For
do want to
sure.
stress the importance of this, right? Spouse, significant other. If you're thinking about going into business or starting a business or doing something, and I've seen this before, make sure that you're communicating this, right? Because I've seen this before where someone has this grand idea and then all of a sudden they start getting a 1 foot in of doing it and they haven't conveyed any communication to their spouse or their significant other. And shit, it kind of blows up because there was no
100%.
communication. Or the spouse isn't all in, after a certain amount of time. I understand you got to communicate, but you've got to have that support system, man. And I think this is a great conversation. And I wasn't actually planning on having this. There was really no plan. I didn't know where this was going to go today, but I think this is such a great conversation for someone who's, looking at getting into business or taking this path, because it's things that most people don't think about. Sometimes they just think, well, I got to get the money, I got to get the finance, I got to have the best idea. No,
Yeah.
the support system is really almost pivotal. If you don't have those anchors, it's going to be a rocky road.
Well, and the cool thing is, so we were about 5 years married at this point when we were having this conversation on the beach in Flaming Gorge. And now it was so good for our marriage to have this conversation, to hear each other like this, and we can go back to this and point these things out. And now it's just, I can go to her and she's like, let's do it, and I'm the same way with her. So we get home, I tell my boss, I'm done, like, kick rocks, I'm out of here. And I found out she was leaving the company too. So it all worked out. So I just said, screw it. She goes, do you want to do your 2 weeks so you can be listed as rehirable? I said, no, I'm either going to become the next Joe Rogan as a comedian or next Richard Pryor, or I'm going to be a really good barber. I'm done. You can list me as unhirable. I'm never coming back to this place. Like, never coming back.
Good decision.
And we were living with my in-laws at the time because the pandemic happened and the housing, it became a seller's market. I'm sure you remember that time. And the house we were renting where we were at, our landlords wanted to sell it. So they sold it. So we moved with my in-laws, and I thought, well, this is the best time. Like, they're not charging us rent. You have a good paying job. I can go, if I need to go and do sales, I can go do sales to make money to make it work. And so I started touring these hair schools, and I thought I'd found the one I was going to do. It's called the Barber School. And we went and toured the facility. We went and I signed up, I filled out my financial aid and did all this. I'm 30 years old and I'm going to go to school with all these 18 to 23-year-old kids. And we were 2 weeks out from actually starting, and I've been sending emails to this school. They weren't responding to me. And it's a big thing to me. Like, I like communication, in sales. If you're not communicating, you're not making money. So communication is a big thing to me. And so I looked at my wife and said, this isn't the school then. And she had thought about moving to Texas to go to grad school. So we were looking at moving to Austin. And again, I thought I wanted to be a stand-up comic because I can go be a barber and then I can do stand-up comedy at night. We don't have kids, so let's take this risk now. And so it was perfect, right? Because all these comedians have moved to Austin. They're building what Joe Rogan's little empire is now out there. And I thought this is perfect, This is my weird delusions of grandeur. I'm going to get out there. I'm going to be a barber. I'm going to cut hair. I'm going to become a stand-up comedian. I'm going to make everyone laugh. And I'm going to become best friends with all those guys. I'm going to be their barber, and I'm going to be going on tour with them. This is how it's going to work. I got it all laid out, right? And we found this school in Provo. And you ever have one of those moments where things just started falling in your lap and it just confirmed to you that you're on the right path? Like, It is the coolest moment, and I hope anyone who's listening to this gets to experience this. When you finally figure out what you want to do and you commit to it full time, man, it's like the universe starts moving things just to make that happen. So we toured this new school.
Hold on, I want to stop there. I want to stop there because I can't stress this enough. If you're not fully committed to getting to doing what you want to do, it's never going to run the way the universe is never going to conspire with you to make it work. You've got to be mentally and physically all in. And I'm not saying don't do other things on the side if you need to generate money, which we'll talk about here in a minute, that you do. But realistically, if you have your feet in two buckets, you're going to split your ass. That's just what it is. And if you're running, it's like running a car, man. If you're going to run on a flat tire, if you're not fully in. And too many times people think, well, I hear this all the time. Well, can I do my corporate job and start the business? No, you can't. You're not going to be successful. Your corporate job's going to suffer, and so is the ramp up of your business. If you're fully committed to getting
to become an alcoholic, and you're going to leave your wife, and your kids are going to hate you. It's going to spiral and spiral and spiral.
Yeah. I had to stop it, man, but I can't stress it enough. You got to be all in. And then the people say, well, people have multiple revenue streams and stuff, and these successful people out there have these multiple revenue streams. Okay, I get that.
After they did their first thing.
I'll tell you this. Their first thing was honed in on something else. And it was one thing that they were successful at. And then after they made all the money and they were successful, then they started doing things with multiple revenue streams.
Grant Cardone and Robert Kiyosaki, they weren't doing all these side hustles, while they were building their real estate empire. And, you have to do that first, and then you can start doing the other things. And so
anyway, I just had to cut it out because it was a good point.
Great. And so I signed up at this school called Taylor Andrews in Provo, Utah, and we're sitting there going, how are we going to pay for this? My wife told me, if you're going to do this, you're not going to have a job. You can't work, because I know your personality and I know that you want to provide. And if you go get a job while you're in school, you'll focus more on the job. So she said, if we're going to do this, you're not allowed to have a job. You have to commit 100%. And man, she's such a gangster for saying that to me, because she was dead on the money. So I didn't work. And I was able to focus 100% on school. And so we're worried how we're going to pay for this, right? And then a scholarship opportunity popped up. So I go to this new school. I get enrolled. They say I can start the next week. I give them my financial aid information. I know school's covered for at least 3 months. It's a year to get your license to be a barber. And I applied for this scholarship. It was a memorial scholarship of this barber who went to the same school, and he died in a motorcycle crash. So the owner of the school and his family decided to set up a memorial scholarship in his name for people to cover their entire tuition. It was called Clayton's Dream Scholarship. And I told them my story in my application. I was a door-to-door salesman. I love the barbershop. This is why my personality was shaped here. I found out later on, I was raised by a single mom, that this barber he didn't really charge my mom for 3 haircuts. And we were always looking fresh. And there were times that, our back to school shopping was $50 at a thrift store. That's how poor we were. So couldn't afford a $20 haircut. I think they were $15 at the time. So many times Paul would just tell my mom, no, thanks for bringing him in. We love you. Have a good day. Your boys are awesome. And I'm getting emotional over it. But I just remember hearing about that later on as an adult, thinking that is the coolest thing in the world. And I talked about that in my application, and it was October. We were getting to a deadline where it was like, you got to have the rest of the money for school, or you got to quit. And I was going to have to quit. And I won that scholarship, and it paid for my entire schooling. I got reimbursed all the financial aid money that they sent over. And we were able to, pay off the credit cards that we were living on at the time. And I was able to go to school. And then I got given these opportunities. It literally felt like, it felt too easy. It just felt like everything was being gifted to me by God, or the universe or whatever. Just everything was being handed to me to the point where I was like, all right, when's the other foot going to drop? Right. Like you can't just always have win after win after win after win, but you can have them. And if you start focusing on those wins, that's the other thing is you got to focus on the right things, because what you think about grows. What you think about, what you attract is what you're going to get. And so I finished school and we had to do this build your own barbershop project. And I had been to a lot of barbershops in my time. So I'd already figured out what I want, how I'm going to do it, where I want it at. And it was a town called Heber City, Utah. I love small towns. I love the vibe of a small town. You know, everyone goes to the football game on Friday night. I romanticize about that Friday night lights lifestyle, you know, clear eyes, full hearts, can't lose type thing. I love that. And so I wanted to live in a town like that. But I also knew I don't like getting overheated in a climate. So the thing that I liked about Heber City was it doesn't get really over 92 degrees in the summer. Maybe there's like 2 weeks where you're at like 97 and then it goes back down to like the high 80s, low 90s. It's lovely. So I'm like, I want to go there. At the time, there was only like 2 barbershops. The town was growing. It was the 8th fastest growing city in America at the time. And I thought, well, that's where I'm going to go. Like, you know, it's a higher end area. People are coming down from Park City because they can't afford Park City. So they've got money. People need haircuts. And if I get in now, and I grow it out, it can turn into something huge and really awesome. And so that's what I built my barbershop project on in school. And I still had 4 months left of school while I'm doing this, but I had envisioned everything that I had wanted, you know, right down to the aesthetic, the name, everything like that. And I graduated and one of my instructors was working in Heber. He brought me up and I started working with him, and then he opened up his own shop and I started working there. And again, another just like falling in my lap. And so I was commuting an hour one way every day. So a 2-hour round trip commute, to go work in this town to build a clientele. And it would have been way easier for me to go work in a barbershop 15 minutes from where we were living. But I knew that if I wanted to open up my own shop, I have to have a clientele. So I should probably just sacrifice the time and listen to an audiobook to enrich my life, use that time to my advantage and go build my clientele and work under this guy who'd been cutting for 10 years and he was really damn good at his job, and go learn from him and figure out how to make this thing work for me. I knew I had the sales expertise. I knew how to talk to any personality. I just need to focus on my technical skill as a barber, which is the actual cutting. And I knew with each haircut, I would get better and better and better. And I could really rely on the skills that I learned in the last 12 years in a sales career, you know, and I could just build up this clientele. And I took the same approach that I did with door-to-door sales, right? I'm going to go find those clients. So every day I would leave the shop I was working at and I would go talk to people. I wasn't even living here yet. I'd go walk around Walmart and talk to people, and I'd go make friends with other small business owners and let them know who I was. And again, I have a passion for getting to know people. I jokingly say I hate people. I hate ineptitude and dumb people. I think we all do. And I know that's a relative term, but I genuinely love meeting people. I think it's fascinating. I think people are beautiful creatures.
I 100% agree with you. That was one thing I loved about, you know, the business that I was in for so many years in the marketing advertising space. There was business owner I'd walk into and I'd meet new people every day. And there was some I'd look at and I go, man, how are you running a business? I love it. And then there's others that I was like, wow, they got their shit together. I love it. So for me, it was always loving the idea, but I want to go back to what you were talking about here. This guy was driving an hour a day there, an hour a day back, cutting hair, and then going out into the community that he lived in, or not lived in, but was working in, and developing relationships. Everybody out there, you don't need $1 million to start a business. Okay. You can just get in the game. Okay. And what you did is you put yourself in the game at that point. Okay. And even if you have to take a loan for your business, it's, again, if you're all in, the universe is going to work it out with you. It's going to conspire with you to make things work. And I love this story. All right. So didn't mean to cut you there, but now you're
Thanks for
building
the
a clientele into a market where and when we met, I think even a year and a half ago or 2 years ago, you were still driving an hour a day, I think, back and forth.
I was. And I can't remember if, we had a mutual friend who owned a coffee shop, and I think that's how you figured out where I was at. And you came in one day, I cut your hair, and I ran into that coffee shop as I did almost daily, because Sean, great guy, love him. He's actually sitting outside right now. He comes in and hang out. I will. Yeah. And so I remember walking into the coffee shop. It was right after cutting your hair. I remember our first conversation. I jokingly said, "Hey man, if you're looking for a Halloween costume with this haircut, you could be a good Mitt Romney impression." And I remember that. We were just laughing our asses off about it.
You remember that? Yeah.
But I walked into that coffee shop, and I'll never forget this. Your wife came running up to me and gave me a hug. And I'm like, who the hell is this lady? Like, just hugging some complete stranger, and that's when I realized that's just your wife. She loves people and loves meeting them, and it was awesome. And it was just as you keep coming in, we started getting to know each other more and more and more. And it's a genuine joy when I find out you and your son are coming in for a haircut. I get really excited because I know we're just going to pick up the conversation where we left off last time. So fast forward, I'm working in Heber City. I've been there for 8 months commuting, 8 months to about a year, and an apartment opens up and we move in. And that was June of last year. And we're still working, and we move up here finally. So now my commute is 3 minutes, no longer an hour. And if I'm being honest, I kind of miss it. I miss the hour that I had. Oh yeah. I could listen to a podcast or an audiobook, and I had that time on my way home that I could decompress. Yeah. And when I stepped through the door, I could be the best husband, right? Now I get home and my wife is like, "How was your day?" And before I could do this, she's already fire hosing me about her day. And I'm like, I missed that hour to where I was like, I could get my crap out of my head and just go be a husband. So now I have to go make that time for myself, which is very important, people. You got to make time for yourself. You can't just business hat off, husband hat on. You got to remember who you are. You can't lose yourself in everything that's going on. It's really easy to lose yourself while you're building these kinds of things. So I'm still working with my former instructor. He opened up his own shop. And I think this happens with a lot of relationships, and especially with business relationships. We started butting heads. And we both had things going on outside of the shop that were affecting our lives, kind of affecting our in-shop relationship. And I remember I was talking to you the week before everything hit the fan, and you had been telling me for a couple months, you just need to go open up your own shop. And I was fucking terrified. No, I'm not ready. I'm not good enough to cut. I don't know how to cut hair. Like I kept telling myself, I don't know how to cut hair. I can't go off on my own. I
remember the logistics. I didn't know the logistics, but I remember I even came to you. I said, I thought for a while you owned it, actually. Yeah. The way we were just, I never really, it didn't matter, but it was just, I just got a sense that you had that ownership already. But yeah, go ahead. We were talking.
And so me and my friend, and I want to be very clear, there's no bad blood. I quickly realized had I stayed there, we wouldn't remain friends. And so that was my motivation to leave. And truth be told, still, I'm glad I did. But there are times when I'm like, I really wish I didn't leave yet. I miss the camaraderie that we had in that shop, but I do genuinely feel like that our relationship, we had ran its course to where we were at personally. If we wanted to keep that friendship, we couldn't work together anymore. Sure. And so it was one of those things where I felt like the universe was finally saying, "Hey, guess what? It's time for you to go open up your own shop." And so February 10th was my last day at that shop. I told my wife I'm going to take 10 days because when we look back, I'm like, all right, well, we moved out of your parents' house. I went to school. I became a barber. I was commuting. We just moved up here. A lot's happened in the last, 18 months. I need to take some time just to breathe and, collect myself and figure out my next steps. So I took that reset and I started looking for spots, and I found a spot that I'm currently in. And when we finally decided again, when you finally commit to something, the universe conspires to make it happen. And I found a spot a weekend before I told everyone I was going to be open. And we put together the shop that I'm in a weekend and got it all ready to go. And I remember opening up my doors Wednesday, the 21st. And my first two clients were a father and son, Jared and Chance Horner. And anyways, it was one of those things where, I'm doing it. And I think you were my first client on my second day, and we were talking about it. We were both just talking about how, I did the thing, it's happening, we're making it work. And yeah, here we are now. But I don't really know where you want me to go from there, or what questions you have as far as that goes. Listen, yeah, I ended up owning my own shop, and every day I'm still doing the thing where I'm going out and I try to hand out a minimum of 5 business cards to strangers, just because I got to go find you to come to me.
This show has been so great. And again, going into it, I didn't, you and I talked about it. We're just going to wrap. I mean, that's it. So what I love about everything that we did today is that it was all the things leading up to it. And a lot of the shows I've had in the past, and again, this show is built on great guests. It's not about me. It's about the people who are sitting with me. And they're in the journey of kind of in the middle of it. And we've talked about, we talk a little bit about the history and how you got to this point, but a lot of times we're kind of talking about where they are currently or where they're going to go in the future. And this one was really, what I loved about this show is the lead up of the things that it takes in order to get to this point where you're going to do your own thing. And a lot of times there's things that are slapping you in the face, but you're so clouded from other distractions that you don't see it. And the one thing that I really respect about you is that you took that leap, and you always knew you wanted to. And listen, here's what it comes down to. You don't have to eat the whole elephant. Okay. You take it in steps. You set goals,
one bite at a time,
strategies, one step at a time. It's a road. Again, enjoy the process, enjoy the road, enjoy the path. Don't get so wrapped up in the end result, because I promise you, when you're all in, the universe is going to help you and guide you and get you to where you need to be. And you subconsciously right away said, consciously and subconsciously said, I'm going to be in Heber. I'm going to have this barbershop. I know what it's going to look like. And it didn't happen the next day. Over the years, it happened, but you were always on that path. So
2 years. 2 years to the day of
2 years, right?
From that project. 2 years to the day of doing that project. And I was talking to Erica, my wife, and I was like, look at the last 12 months of our life. We moved to Heber. I built up a great clientele. I've got I feel like the luckiest guy in the world, right? You know that book, The Richest Man in Babylon? That's me, because of the people I get to talk to on a weekly basis. Man, I learned so much from you. Or I have a client who was the former CEO of Sinclair, the gas company. And are you kidding me? I get 45 minutes of uninterrupted time with these people who are like titans in their industry. I get to pick their minds and take from them and like go on. And I'm really excited because like where I'm at now, this is just the beginning. I know you and I kept saying, we just kept saying this is the beginning of something huge. And I believe it. I'm working 2 additional jobs on top of my barbershop right now just to keep it going. And it's not because I'm not making money as a barber. I'm making great money. I can't complain. I get to wake up every morning, go to a place that I designed to be a place that you want to hang out at. And truth be told, I feel like you guys pay me to talk shit. And I get to be a stand-up comedian, but I get to do it in my way. And I love it. And so I'm also a bouncer at a bar in Park City, and I'm handing out cards there, and I get to come up with the craziest stories with the people and the shenanigans they pull. And drunk people are wild. And I get to talk about it the next day in the shop. And I also do Uber and DoorDash and everything that I can to make sure our bills are paid and I can focus on my business and grow it. And the reason I chose Ubering and DoorDash and being a bouncer at a bar, every DoorDash order I do, I drop a business card in. So now I'm telling myself I'm getting paid to market myself. And if this converts over, it doesn't matter if they do or not, because I'm still getting paid to put a business card in a bag of McDonald's food and drop it off on a doorstep. But I've had, 15 or so of my regular clients came in because I did that. And so, the hour of making $20, right? Delivering 5 orders has netted me, $550 per client, basically.
Compounding.
Yeah, and I already know where I want to end up with my shop, and I think I've told you about it. I want to open up a speakeasy and a cigar lounge behind a barbershop and have all that connected, and that's my 10-year plan now. Before the Olympics come back to Utah, I hope it's up and going. And so, but yeah, man.
I'm telling you, this has been a really special show. I can't believe it's been over an hour. I mean, we're just
that's crazy. It flew.
We could do a part 2 eventually, but I got to tell you, it's been a fantastic show, and I love the story of your journey, because there's a lot of people out there right now who either were in a place that you were in, and they're just it can happen for you too. It can. You just got to believe in the fact that you gotta be
stupid is really what it does, right? Like entrepreneurship is the wildest and craziest and the dumbest thing you can do. It really is. Logically, on paper, it doesn't make any sense at all. It doesn't. And when you look at the odds, it doesn't work out very often. But if you look at the people, I kept saying to myself, my dad is very much the kind of guy who is just pick a career, stay there and work there and you're good. Kiss ass, cash checks, pay your bills. And I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. No. And all the people we revere are the people who pushed against what you're supposed to do, right? Like Steve Jobs was the most unconventional guy in the world, but people talk about him almost as a god, or as almost like he's a prophet, and just all these revolutionaries did what they did because that's what they felt like they needed to do for themselves, and they changed the world. And am I saying I'm going to change the world? No, I'm not. I don't think I'm going to be like Paul Mitchell or anything like that, but I know that what I wanted to do was to build something that made me happy. And I also got paid to do it. And that's what I'm doing. And you just got to be a little stupid. You just got to be dumb enough and crazy enough to take the leap, but take it. Like you listening right now, quit your job, go do what you want to do. Go be that baker, go be a professional skater. If you're 55 years old, probably don't go do that, because your body's but go do the thing you always wanted to do. If you talk to children and ask them what they want to do with their lives, how many people say they want to be an accountant? I want to be a data manager. I want to be quality assurance. I want to be an HR manager. No, I want to be an astronaut. I want to be the president. I want to do this. What happened? Go fucking do it. Just go do it. Go be happy. And I'm not saying I'm always happy. It's hard, but it's rewarding and it's mine. And I'm building my own thing and I'm my own boss. And I don't have to worry about my hourly wage being taken away from me because this joke that I said didn't land correctly, or I said something off the cusp and it didn't hit. People will be attracted to my personality, and I can make money off that way. And you guys can too, if that's what you want to do. But at the end of the day, man, like, the news is keeping us depressed, so just go choose to be happy, and whatever you're happy with, figure out how to make money. Like, what do you like to do, and how can you make money off of it? Just work backwards and write it down in like 5 steps, and just go follow those 5 steps. And I promise you, I'm not making nearly as much money as I used to, but God damn it, I am the happiest I've ever been. And it shows in what I do every single day. And yeah, now my wife's mad because I never want to come home because I've got the coolest spot to hang out in, and I hang out with all my friends.
He does have a cool spot, and I couldn't have said it better myself. You just, honestly, to close it up the way that you closed it up, it's the truth. Just, you got to go out and do it, and that's it. I mean, the mic is dropped. There are a lot of things to go back to on this show and listen to, but I think if we can take one thing away, it's just just do it, man. Just go do it. You don't have to have everything lined up.
Our brains are designed to think of every possible worst outcome, right? To protect us. That's our ego protecting us. But Nike's slogan is just do it. It's not just think about it and scare yourself I'm not doing it, following the status quo. It's just go do it. And you just gotta, I still gotta do this, right? I still gotta tell myself on a daily basis, just don't overthink it. Like, you have an idea. Is it achievable? Is it a crazy idea? I mean, it's not like, I'm going to jump off a building and fly, but do you have an idea that's not really all that outlandish? Is it scary? Yeah. That makes you excited, right? Well, go do it. Don't think about it. Because if you think about it, you'll never do it. Just go do it.
That's it.
So
listen, man, this has been a fantastic show. Phillip Kirk, I want to thank you for being a guest. We're going to check in down the road. I'd love to have you back on as you grow and as we grow. And where can people find you, man, if they want to hit you up, have questions for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll make sure you have my social so you can put it up on the description if you do that. But we'll on Instagram and Facebook, right? Phillip Kirk, PHILLRP, 2 L's, not one. And Kirk like Captain. And then on Instagram, under Philly Fresh, because apparently you have to have a other name, but whatever. So it's Philly, like the Philadelphia Phillies, and then Fresh is spelled with a PH. But yeah, Philly Fresh on Instagram. Eventually I plan to have a podcast. We talked about that in your last haircut. And I'm starting back up with the open mics, and come to Salt Lake City and come watch me make a fool of myself on a stage in front of people. And then come get a haircut. It'll be the funnest haircut you have. Might not be the best, but it will be the funnest.
Dude, this guy is a blast.
But yeah,
it's great having you here again. Thank you. And he is Phillip Kirk. I am David Sliman. Check us out at salesproformance.com. If you have any comments, questions, email us at gopro@salesproformance.com. All you professionals out there, thanks for listening. Thanks for the support. And we will see you next time.